Welcome, everyone. We're so delighted to have this panel after the screening of Minari. My name is Nina Ichikawa. I'm the Executive Director of the Berkeley Food Institute and also a writer and researcher on Asian American farmers and retailers. I'm so excited to have an all-star panel here of agriculture experts who are going to share their experiences, and we're going to talk about the film. First, I want to just give credit to the organizers of this panel. Asian American Farmers Alliance is a group of Asian American farmers and advocates in solidarity with each other and other land-based peoples. From seeds to policy, we collaborate for diversity and food sovereignty. And I really want to thank Mai Nguyen and all the organizers of this panel for getting us all together. So before we get into the juicy discussion and giving away more of the film's details, I'd just like to have each of the panelists introduce themselves. Why don't we start with Mas, please?
Thank you. I'm Masumoto. We farm outside of Fresno, California, which is in the very center of the state. We grow organic peaches, apricots, nectarines, and make raisins, organic raisins too, on an 80-acre farm. And we've been organic since the 1980s.
Wonderful, thank you. G, what about you next?
I am the Central Valley, but I'm north in Sacramento. And I do mostly Asian vegetables and cut flowers. And I've been doing organically since I started farming 2010.
Great. David, can you go next, please?
Yes, I'm up in the high desert of San Bernardino County, and I grow organic jujubes, so Asian dates, and we have 20 acres and about 1,400 jujube trees.
Amazing.
Exclusive.
Wonderful.
We do have a couple of greenhouses, about 2,800 square foot on one and about 3,500 square foot on the other. That's just from my mother's side hobby, growing all the vegetables that she wants.
Side hobby, yeah.
6,000 square foot side hobby.
Amazing, amazing. And last but not least, Nikiko, please.
Yes, hello. I'm super happy to be here. My name is Nikiko Masumoto. You might recognize the resemblance of last name. Mas is my father. I'm Yonsei, fourth generation Japanese American, and I farm with my dad here in the Central Valley. And just a real pleasure to be in conversation with y'all.
Great, thank you so much. Well, we've all seen the film and I was blown away by it. I just have to say, just to start off, it really reminded me of a farmer I know named Ken Suzuki out in Delaware, who had a very similar life. He came as a chicken sexer and then transitioned into Asian vegetables. So I know that there are other people from other countries and in other parts of the US who've had a similar trajectory as the Yi family. But just jumping into the film, Minari, I want to hear from anyone. What about this film resonated with you or you really enjoyed?
I could kick off. I cried a lot through this film. It was so tender. And as a Yonsei, so my great grandparents immigrated from Japan. Although this follows a Korean family, there was this amazing sense of filling in some of the embodied memory of what it must have been like for my great grandparents to be flowing in this betwixt and between of the longing for home, the homeland, but yet still trying to cultivate a home and a life for family here in America. And so I was really deeply moved. And I was joking that the film should come with a tissue warning, like to bring a box of tissues, because at least I cried many times.
Well, I'm Korean American, and so everything about this movie was exactly, and I know it's about farming, but it's more about the tradition and the culture and the thought processes of everything, right down to the punishment with the switches. I mean, I got all of that. So it was exactly my upbringing, and the same, with the grandparents and so on. So it was very, very, and I identify with Jacob's situation as the man of the house, head of the house, and having this great big burden of moving into some place that his wife clearly didn't want to go, didn't want to be involved, but and it was it was heart wrenching in a lot of areas, and so I identified with every bit of it.
100%. I was also struck by just the beauty of the nature. Of course, that they know that they filmed they shot the film in Oklahoma, and it was supposed to be set in Arkansas, and it reminded me how much those of us who our family has been in agriculture, everyone talks about all the hardships and maybe the bad parts, but the beautiful parts that are so gorgeous, the privilege of the family to be able to live in such a beautiful area. I thought the film did a nice job of that. And would hope to maybe tempt some city people to spend more time out in the country.
I watched the film, and it's me as a first immigrant or refugee to come to this country in the first generation. It really felt connected to me in both ways, back home and in here, and try to establish a family and then try to survive in peace with the family. Everything is just like you said, it's a lot of crying, it's a lot of hardships, a lot of struggle in trying to make everything works. And it just, the whole thing, I think that I can really relate it to this film. It just coming here with a big dream, trying to make everything better, and yet there's so much struggle and so much obstacle and challenge that I'm foreseeing. It's a challenge to, you can imagine what he said, big land, but yet there's so much work to be done before you can really get that piece of land going. So it's a lot. It's really, it really hurting. Yeah.
It's fascinating, David and G, that you talk about as first generation, and I'm third generation. So it was as if this was a time machine. And I was looking back at my grandparents when they first arrived from Japan, not speaking any English, landing in this California valley with crops they didn't quite understand. And how could they grow and relate with this, let alone deal with all the other community people too? So I thought of them, and especially the grandmother in the film reminded me of my grandmother growing up. There's a scene where she's walking with her hands behind her back. That's exactly how my grandmother would walk through the fields here. So I had this flashback about that time machine. But at the same time, I couldn't help but look at it through my eyes, a third generation later, and I immediately started worrying about the economics of what they were doing. Would they be able to make a living off of that? And I started thinking about my grandparents, and did they worry about those things? Yes, they did, but they also knew they couldn't control a lot of things, which again, me being more American, and thinking about how, oh no, you try to control things as much as possible. So when he ran out of water, I went, oh gosh, you gotta solve that. And the film was interesting where they dealt with that, and then it sort of moved on from that. And, again, as a third generation farmer, I kept thinking, no, I would have to deal with that. Of course, he dealt with it in the film by shutting the water off to the family, which I thought that's exactly what my grandparents would have done. And here's the wild thing, it's exactly what I would have done too, on that. So it made me understand and relate with that too.
What about, go ahead.
I was going to relate it, how the grandma and the boy got water from the creek. That's exactly what we did back home. We don't have a running water, so the only water we got is fetches from the creek, and that's exactly what grandma do. Yeah, I think that's really something that American or Caucasian people don't really get to see it, because they have better resource for water. And for us Asian, we don't really have that running water. So I guess it's really touching, but in a way, it's something that it just come naturally.
Mm. Mm. The drive to survive, and it is. It's some people it's get lost, or it can be hard to keep the longer we're in the United States. And since you brought up the grandmother, you know, the title of the film is Minari, which I looked up is Chinese parsley or drop mugwort, which is a I guess grows well close to the water. And her immediate you know, the father, her son-in-law was thinking about what to sell to the market an American way, and she was thinking, what can we eat ourselves and have as backup, right? And she immediately started planting that. Was there any, do you have any stories like that in your own family of maybe something that was a food that no one else knew about, but your family wanted to make sure to grow?
I'm really related to this. We got here, and as a homemaker, I have 7 kids. And I mean, cucumbers and like that in the store, they have a lot, but to me, it's a lot of mouth to feed. And I'm realizing that, hey, why not just grow some cucumbers? And I never realizing that I'm going to be a farmer, because I have backyard, and I show my kids that maybe we just grow some. And then by doing some, we got too many, so we share with the neighbors. And then eventually I just tell my kids, maybe I do more research. And then back then, you had 7 kids, and you don't hardly have time to do much of anything. You shower them to school and back and doing their homework and do all this stuff. But then I realizing that, hey, if I can get into a farmer's market, we'll do something. And then by doing that, I was able to make some money, not a lot, but I earn it, right? So the kids and I were really happy. And I told the kids, let's save the money for the summer, and then we'll see how much we have. And then I take you to Disneyland. It's the first time that I'm going to be able to take the kids to Disneyland. And then my husband said, don't do that to them, because they're going to anticipate every year they're going to do it. I said, well, that way they can be a farmer, and they don't have to rely on us. And then that's how we start the farmers. But I think that whatever you do, it has to come within yourself, and you have to really do it in a way that you have a passion for it. So, and then whatever you grow, like the vegetable that the grandma was trying to grow, it's her daily, it's a routine vegetable that they use back home. But to put that in the market, a lot of the mainstream might not know what it is, and they might look at it, oh, it's interesting, but what they want to try, few might, but might not be a lot. At first it might be slow sale, but for her it's a starter. And when that kicking, I was like, okay, we did that with the pico, and yet we got into the farmer market, and then we start adding things, and we'll find out exactly what other customers eating and what they're doing. They say, oh, you have this kinds of pico, but then I didn't realize there's so many pico out there. You find there's so many, and then you start collecting idea as to what they eat, and then you grow from there. And that's how I become a farmer. But I do as I learned. I don't really just like, this is my produce. I do a little bit and I add in, and people come and say, do you have this and that? But now I'm realizing, as an Asian, I eat all the Asian vegetable. So I grow mostly what I eat, I share with my customer. That way, if I don't sell them, I eat them. I don't have to go and shop for it. So it's good. I don't have to grow what people eat, but I grow what I eat, and I teach them how to cook. Like I grow water spinach. Um, I, I guess a lot of Asian country, it's a water plant, but I was able to grow it. And then I teach people to do it. You can eat it raw, you can branch it, or you can stir fry or stem it. And then I just teach them. And now I have people come in, they know exactly who I am. They say, oh, the water spinach lady. So it is.
Such
But
a
you have to educate them, because when they look at it, it's a plant of a long leaf, and they don't know what to do with it because they never seen it before. So a farmer, we get to teach other people to eat what we love to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
It sounds like,
educating. So
it
that's
sounds
why
like this could be Minari Part 2.
Yeah.
Story on
I
that.
think so.
Actually, for David, I had a quick question. David, is Minari really common in Korea? I mean, I had never heard of it till this movie.
Yeah, it grows near the water. It needs a lot of water, fresh water, and personally, it does have a strong flavor. But along with the growing vegetable in our greenhouse, it grows everything from kale to cucumbers, all kinds of tomatoes, and everything to make the kimchi. Koreans love the kimchi, and it's so much. I mean, and it's not for sale. I mean, she's not doing it to sell, but she's for our consumption and her friends and family, and just giving it away. So whoever wants to come, they come, and she's thanking them for taking a lot of the vegetable, which is, and there's nothing like fresh produce.
Yeah. I almost thought of it as similar to mugwort or yomogi, Japanese mugwort, which I know grows wild and also has a strong flavor, but then people work it into, mix it into other things. And it's also sort of a wild crop that doesn't usually fetch that much in the grocery store, but a lot of people like it. So it's a survival thing. So I just really want to understand also, G, in terms of your strategy for engaging the next generation, did you take them to Disneyland that first year, or you made them wait?
No, we don't get to go 3 years.
3 years, okay.
They're so expensive.
Yeah, of course, good.
We go to and then the kids enjoy it.
Yeah. Good. It really resonates with what you said. Everyone needs to have something they feel passionate about with the farming.
Well, I like G's story too, that you eat what you grow. And when I grew up, you know, my folks always planted, especially for my grandmother who lived with us for a while, either napa or daikon. And we grow it actually in between the rows. I mean, we had perennial crops of trees and vines in section for a garden, but we even grew the daikon, I remember, between the peach trees and harvested it early. And my grandmother always made some tsukemano, pickled daikon or pickled napa, so that aroma was always in our house, especially in the laundry room. So it's something you grew up with on that.
And so healthy. I've just learned that some American farmers grow daikon and throw it away as a cover crop or something. So that sort of blew me away that happens. I don't think that would happen in some other countries. David, in terms of crops that are Americans are still learning about, how has it been your process with the jujubes?
Well, the jujubes is primarily Chinese, Korean, and Indian cultures. It's in their history. But I don't know, in Japan, are you aware or familiar with jujubes?
My understanding more its usage in Chinese medicine, which is popular in Japan, but maybe people eat it. I have a limited understanding, but more a sense of it's a Chinese fruit and used
Right.
sometimes. Hmm.
Yeah, my best friend is Japanese, and he says it's not really popular in Japan. So as far as marketing to the United States or the American public, it's not very easy. So so we're focusing on what we can do, and slowly, trying to get into the mainstream market. But it's gonna take a while.
And are your customers more focused on eating it fresh or as a dried fruit or as a medicine?
As a dried fruit, Koreans don't eat this as a medicine. It's healthy, so they enjoy it in all different forms. Fresh fruit, or dried, or cooking it into a tea, drinking it that way.
If there's one thing in the film I wanted to see more of was the marketing of what they were growing, exactly what kind of vegetables they were growing. He had the market, I believe it was in Dallas that he finally made the connection. And I was wondering, what other markets would they relate to, connect with, and what Asian population was he going to grow it for? Was he able to, like David is trying to do, get an American audience for some of that? It was that side of the story I wanted to hear more of too. Of course, they're limited in the amount of time that they could do a film with that. But that's what I longed for too, because it also then maybe create that whole circle where this was an immigrant story, but I also wanted to see how that immigrant and their food fits into the larger world around them. The end of the film, when they go back to looking for water, you get a sense that they're still farming. He must have found markets for it. That's why they're going to do another well, which would be an investment for the future in that. But I wanted to see, okay, was it with the Korean foods, and was it in Dallas, or was it in other parts of that part of America that were looking for a different way of eating? And would have loved to see some chef or something to be part of that dialogue right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I was struck. He kind of talked about I was struck by his confidence and his demographic research. He said, we're going to have 30,000 Koreans coming every year, and I'm going to sell just to them. But then, his first customer did fall through, right? He said, you can never trust a city Korean. He started screaming, and then that was a dig to his wife. And then and then I think that the customer he did find was in Oklahoma City. He said was 5 hours away, but he said they had driven to Dallas before. So I mean, it's a lot of driving, as those of you who are farmers know well about. And I wondered also in the end, did he intend to sell the Minari to his new customer? It had been just a home crop, but in his desperation after the fire now, but he had a new customer who seemed like a good guy, and that was a new beginning, right? But this interplay between community that supports you or ditches you. I mean, what about that topic of community? It was also interesting how the family navigated that, also the community they lived in, the church community, the neighbors, as well as the larger Asian American community. Does anyone have any experiences or thoughts you'd like to share on that?
I found it was really interesting watching that dynamic racially of this Asian American family in this, at least in the film, entirely white community from what the characters I could see. And what was so really interesting to me was this way in which there were moments where I, as an Asian American, I felt worried about their safety. The kind of like menace of white supremacy was like right there, like, ooh, are they going to beat up David, the little boy? Like, is there going to be public shaming at the church, the all-white church that they go to? And so it was really interesting the way in which the film portrayed this family in this landscape of American race and racism, the kind of moving in between being different and marginalized and outside, clearly marked as outside, but then again also kind of working in between. And I thought if there was a longing I had, I was curious to think more deeply about the multiplicity of experience of race in the United States. And if the movie took place right in Arkansas, right, like, so thinking about the way in which Asians get positioned differently in relationship to Black Americans who were probably in the same region, you know, the 1980s, right? So we don't know, I don't know enough about Arkansas if there were still segregated cities. There probably were segregated neighborhoods. So that was really interesting. Like the level of threat that I felt on behalf of the Yi family was quite striking to me.
Well, and what I felt about that dynamic of this Korean family moving into a rural white area, and it's just trying to fit in, and also there is a lot of desperation, and you know, being obviously isolated, and the issue with you know, being separated from friends and family. And so it's not, none of this is their first choice. You know, it's not, it wasn't his wife's first choice to go to the church, but it was a suggestion by the husband who is not a believer, but he's trying to kind of fill in some of the void by having some kind of social interaction. And towards the end, it was a desperation when the grandmother got sick, and even though, you know, and the frustration with Jacob that his wife is, you know, depending on or hoping for something that you know, I guess when your back's up against the wall and you need something, you need some hope. So it was heart-wrenching.
Yeah,
I
like
thought
their
of
first.
I thought of my grandparents and what would they have faced. I'm sure like G had this sense too, as a first generation immigrant into this new land, foreign land. And you know, what baggage do you bring with you, or what type of assimilation or acceptance do you have? And it's got to be really tough, a real challenge, because again, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a later time, and you know, Japanese wasn't my primary language, English was, and I learned Japanese later, but it was this whole idea of how do you fit or not fit, and what do you need to do as an immigrant. And I thought that's where really the heart of the movie was this immigrant experience. And that's where I had to watch it a second time. The grandmother says this interesting thing about the Minari when they're first planting it. She says, oh, it grows anywhere, it's wonderful, it's healthy, and you have gratitude with it. And I kept thinking, gosh, if I was in that situation, I'd be much more American, where I'd be, you know, want to struggle and challenge about things and face different things. I go, no, this is an immigrant story here, and I'm not an immigrant. But so that's why it was really interesting to see that kind of dynamic. And yet I understood clearly a lot. And David alluded to, you know, being Asian American, what is that like? Being not only not white, but you're Asian, and that adds this other dynamic to that, to it. And I found the religious aspect intriguing because I was raised as a Buddhist and still am a Buddhist, and understand that kind of dynamic that we really live in a Christian world. So they had that character Paul, who would be carrying the cross, you know, and it's sort of like, wow, and this is Arkansas. That's, you know, a Bible Belt, very heavy religious area. And how does that work in there? And I don't know, as an immigrant, what my grandparents went through, if they ever felt that kind of dynamic, that because they weren't Christian, what did that mean to that?
Yeah, my great-grandfather, who came in 1897, he first was very active in the Christian church, and then later in life very active in the Buddhist church. So I don't know what was in his mind of his belief system, but it's survival for sure. And you know, that character Paul, he was almost sort of white shaman. You know, he wasn't just Christian. He was of his own special, and he was marginalized even in that community, right? The kids were laughing at him, and I thought that was a powerful statement, that was their first guest, and that they decided to, you know, seek some type of alliance with him, in contrast to the Korean coworker at the chicken plant. This stuck out in my mind. She said, "We moved here to get away from the Korean church." So I thought that's interesting, that, you know, there was a more go it alone, or, you know, not try and build new bridges to survive when the bridge that she had expected might not have been right there. That I thought that was interesting, sort of stuck out. Yeah.
The movie with the husband suggest they go into the church. I think he feel really hurt by his wife not having a social connection, and as an immigrant coming to this country, if you go live in a rural area like that, there are really few people, then you don't have any of your people or your family close for connection and for support, and just you and your husband, like the Yi family, it's really a lot of keeping inside. And I guess it really touching that as a young family like the Yi or any family, you do need your family 100%, but you also need an outsider support. And social support, it's really a way for you to look back in yourself, whether you have to have some perspective, and then some way to fall into, so that there's better things in life. But if you keep going the same thing, then you don't see whether you need to make a corrections or whether you made mistakes. So for the Yeats to do that, I think that they had some with the people after the church were eating, and then they converse and talk to the people. I think his idea was for her to really congregate and talk to the other white mom out there, to see if they have the same struggle that like the Yi. And I think we all go through life that we need a social support, and that's really touchy, because not everyday man would think that women need a connection, because we get the kids and the grandma and everybody, but as a woman we do need all time with the woman. So that's really touchy for me.
I agree. And we have just a few more minutes in this wonderful panel. I wanted to hear, of course, we love the film. Was there anything that didn't resonate with you, or you didn't like, or wanted to see more of?
I watched the film with an open mind. It's I don't see it as I didn't see it as a movie about farming, Asian farming. It's just a story about immigrant family coming and trying to make a living. And it's not, I would imagine it's not their first choice. You know, doing the sexing of the chicks. Mm-hmm. Nobody would want to do that. And so, but it's they have to do that to survive. And farming was Jacob's. I don't know, was that his passion, or I think it was his passion that, you know, he wanted to be out in the country and do that. And a lot of people do that up here too. But the rural lifestyle, and I see the same with a guy, with Paul in the cross. There's a guy up here in the high desert. He does that all the time, walking down the highway.
Wow.
It is. I think it's very, and the rural you get, the more conservative you get. so that's pretty common. So it's, yeah, the social interaction, and it's out of desperation and necessity. You know, even if his wife were able to form some sort of a friendship with the church members, you know, it could never be a deep friendship because they don't have anything in common, you know, and it's just more of a on a superficial level interacting with people. So it's a tough situation.
I had a little ironic problem. I thought the movie was really slow at times. And then it dawned on me, wait a minute, this is about farming. I should, right? And then I said, it's also about rural communities where life is a lot slower. But for some reason, I wanted things to go a little faster.
You wanted some car chases or something?
Here's the irony about the car. You know, I didn't realize later that the film was supposed to be set in the 1980s. And I said, and you know why? Because they drove an old car. Farmers drive old cars all the time. That's why it seemed natural to me. Until last year, our main truck was a 1973 Chevy, and I thought it was fine. And that's why I thought it was actually contemporary for the longest time. And I'm sure other people go, oh no, that's an old car from the 80s. And I know that car too. I've driven cars like that. But on a farm, we would normally have that kind of car, which maybe contributed to this notion of it being a little slow for me in that sense. But also I was trying to capture that dynamic, and I have to remember, for first generations, life, they needed to slow it down because they're thinking literally in two languages, two cultures, two worlds at the same time, and it could be just too chaotic, where me, again, you know, I'm too Americanized in that sense. So that was my thought about it. Later, I started thinking, why am I saying it so slow?
That's so
Look outside our windows. Life is slow out there.
I thought the movie was fun. I thought the speed was what?
That's so funny. Well, just as we wrap up, real quick, popcorn style, who was your favorite character? And I'll go first, the grandma. Nikiko?
I think the older sister, Anne.
She was awesome. G?
I like the little boy. Yeah.
Mas?
I actually had two. I love the grandmother because it reminded me of my grandmother. And yet the little boy, David, in a way, I was sort of like David. Well, very different and got mad at things. So,
David, you're another David.
No, I can't really pick because they're all, you know, so different and they all have their merits and their own individuality. So, yeah, I can't. I like them all.
Wonderful.
that's because it's Korean, David. That's why you.
Yeah. Well, obviously, the little boy and the grandma stole the show. They provided a lot of the comic relief and the action, but
yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you.
His wife was very intense. And
the wife was very intense.
Understandably. Sorry.
Well, thank you all so much. I know that we're at time. I really want to thank the producers and cast of this film, who I'm sure had to overcome a lot of obstacles just to get this film made. We know what a shortage of these stories are out there. So I want to thank everyone for making this film. I want to thank you for Nikiko Masumoto, David Paeng, Masumoto, and G. Moua for participating in this panel. And I want to thank our organizing committee for this panel from Asian American Farmers Alliance. In addition to Mai Nguyen, the ringleader, Eileen Suzara, Andrea Hatsukami, Kristen Leach, and Scott Chang Fleeman, as well as Mai, I think just did an amazing job. And we'd like to thank A24 Studios and just encourage everyone to tell your friends and watch this movie. So thanks again to the farmers. Thanks for the food that you put on our plates. And we really wish you a successful season this next year and beyond. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for taking the time.